Alright, so we're here for the final committee meeting. Oh shit, we have all 5 members. So I just want to preface
Come on,
this. If you're
Tamar,
looking
hit
if you're
the-
looking at last week's rankings, these are probably gonna be a lot different just because it was just me and Rick last time. So I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of different takes this time, so you might see some different rankings. So before we say anything, we have 5 auto bids to consider, and the top 4 have to be conference championships since we have auto bids. So we have Ohio State 13-0, Memphis 13-0. You got Clemson 11-2, Baylor who's 10-3, and Georgia who's 11-2, who won a thrilling 5 overtime game against Oklahoma. So we got to go through the top 4 first before we even consider at-larges. So I think far and away, anybody have any disagreement with Ohio at number 1? Ohio State? They dismantled
No.
Illinois.
No.
Okay. Unanimous, Ohio State's the number 1 team. They just boat raced Michigan and Illinois. Not even like a question.
It was not even close. And it'll probably happen in real life, but I'll take a Big Ten West title.
Alright, so now this is where it kind of gets interesting. So I think it's easy to look at Memphis for the 2 spot because we had Washington lose. They kind of choked. But I kind of want to throw out Clemson just to see if they maybe have it. So first let's look at Memphis. What do you guys think about Memphis? They did win a tight one again against Tulane this time.
I personally don't see a way you can keep them out of 2 after being 13-0.
I kind of agree with that, especially in kind of like as chaotic as the SFA usually is. I think 13-0 is just such a different kind of testament.
Yeah, you got to go with Memphis at number 2 at this point.
Okay, so
they're really the only other undefeated. So
interesting. All right, so everybody's in agreement there, besides me. So let me just look at and tell you why. I know I just watched DJ throw 3 interceptions in a win, but let me show you. Okay, there are only 2 losses, right? UNC, that's a really bad one, right? 20 points on the road. And then Georgia Tech at home, they are a good team, or loss, though. But they've won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games in a row. At NC State, who might get in, talk about that later. A ranked Syracuse, a ranked Florida State, a ranked Boston College, a ranked South Carolina. None of those teams are ranked, really. And then they just beat Miami. Like, I think the strength of schedule leans in the favor of Clemson, but does 2 losses that are bad overcome 13-0?
100%. It 100%. I think Memphis is more impressive.
Yeah.
To be honest,
if the losses were close, then maybe I could get on board. But I mean, they're not even close.
If Clemson only had 1 loss, I'd be saying go Clemson 100% over Memphis. But I think the fact that they have 2 is, I don't think you can drop.
Yeah, I don't think you can drop 2 games and still be rewarded as like one of the top 2 teams in the country. I just don't. I don't, especially when there's an undefeated team there.
I think the only team that would have any sort of a play here for 2 besides Memphis would be Clemson because of strength. But yeah, no. So we'll give it to Memphis at 2. Pencil them in. Dogwater's gonna be happy. Except no, he's probably gonna be like, no. Why aren't we number 1? All right, so now the real decision happens. So really the only difference between... So here's kind of how the seeding works. Top 4 teams are conference championships. The first round Bulls go in order of who's the closest. So like Ohio State, most likely the closest is going to be the Sugar Bowl. And then Memphis is probably going to be in the Peach Bowl because the Sugar Bowl's taken, and then so on and so forth. So number 3 does matter. You have Clemson and then Georgia. Georgia. They won in 5 overtimes against a 7-5 team. 5 overtimes.
And there are no wins there.
No.
Yeah, I mean, the best win, Georgia Tech, they absolutely destroyed them. Auburn's a decent win. Like,
Yeah.
you gotta remember, Auburn at one time was in the top 5.
Yeah, I think that's what. Yeah, you have to remember. Like a lot of these games were, like huge matchups. I mean,
Like, Tennessee was a high-ranked game, too.
yeah,
That was game day, actually, and we saw Tennessee couldn't stop anything.
and it's not like their losses are bad. Like South Carolina at the beginning of the season was unfreaking stoppable. Bama is Bama to an extent,
Right.
and that was a close game. I don't know that they should go. I don't know that they should go above Clemson. I think it's so tough. I think Clemson's 3. I think you put Georgia 4. And I think you can make a pretty good case for that. I don't think too many people would dispute that.
Now, let's just take a look at Baylor just because they are the only other team that could have a chance. I know Flame isn't allowed to talk here. So, week 1 loss, I'm going to chalk that up. A lot of week 1 losses. A loss to Washington, and then the bad one to OK State. I don't see them getting a first round or like a top 4 seed.
Neither do I.
I agree. I think they're a solid 5th from what I've seen.
Well, I don't
Because
know
of
about
three
5th. I
losses.
don't know about 5th, but
Well, I'm
we'll
just saying.
see.
I'm saying from what we've looked at so far.
Yeah. Okay, so it's between Clemson and Georgia. I'm voting Clemson. I thought that they had a chance at 2. So for me, slotting them at 3, the ACC is the best conference this season. Anyone disagree at Clemson at 3?
I'm on board with that.
Clemson at 3 for me.
I'll take Clemson at 3.
Okay, Rick,
Yeah.
Clemson at 3.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Clemson's at 3, and then is everyone that kind of just leaves Georgia at 4. Are you guys?
Yep. I'm good with that.
I think Georgia
Yeah, that-
belongs with 4.
Yeah. It's closer than I thought it would be, but I still think Georgia with 2 losses got to be ahead of Baylor.
Yeah, I mean, we've been underwhelmed by them all season. Like, I don't think, like, yeah, it was such an exciting game, but you can't reward that team for winning in 5 overtimes in a game that they're favored by 16.5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so this is where it gets fishy. The only rule now is we have to rank Baylor in the top 8. So, number 5 also, I kind of want to keep matchups in mind as well. We don't really want rematches in round 1. We don't, you don't want like to stack one side of the bracket with 3 of the same conference, right? So let's keep that in mind. But, so where do we go from here? So who are our top contenders, right? So, obviously Baylor.
Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Yes. So let me just go conference by conference. NC State does have a shout, so I'm gonna write them down. I'm just gonna write down all the teams that have a shout here at the playoff because I don't want to miss somebody. The American, no.
No.
Big 12, Kansas State has a shot.
I think they deserve to be in there
Yeah, Kansas State.
somewhere.
Yeah, we're gonna sort it all out. Big 10, nobody else, or Maryland. They are
Yeah,
2
put
lost.
Maryland.
Let me check Maryland's schedule.
I'm gonna check them all. I just want to get a tally first. So
Okay.
Not in here. Yeah.
Memphis is already in. Notre Dame. Just want to make, because in a few of these meetings we've forgotten a team and had to rank them lower. Miami choked the bed. UNLV, no chance. And then obviously now you have Washington and you have Stanford. And then SEC, we already have Georgia in. And Florida Atlantic, USF, no chance. Okay, so who do you guys like the most? I think Washington. Or go ahead.
I think NC State has a really impressive record, like a strength of record. I think NC State has if you look at their schedule, their strength of record, like the teams that they've beaten, it has been really impressive. They've had a lot of really tough games that they've been able to pull out.
Okay, so they lost to Clemson. But they have 3 straight wins here over some big name teams, and including Georgia Tech. That's a pretty impressive stretch.
That's
there.
what I'm saying.
but 2 losses straight, and then they rattled off more wins. These games are all shit, though. I mean, Syracuse
You got Syracuse at
needs to
the
win.
end.
Yeah. Now, is this enough to get over one of the 1-loss teams?
I do not think so, personally.
I'm not thinking that's enough to get over one of the 2-loss teams, but I do think that they're potentially the best 2-loss team.
Okay. So let's take a look now. Let's go look at the Big 12. So you have 2 teams that we need to consider. Obviously, Baylor, we just looked at them. They do have the conference championship, so we kind of need to factor that in. I don't know how many, like, if that makes up for any of these losses. Kansas State, we all know that they got boat raced by Baylor, so I think they have to be below Baylor.
I agree.
I'm not so quick with that.
So what's your reasoning?
I can have disagreements here. Like, I'm the only reason I'm not so quick with that is simply because one of these teams has dropped 1 game, which I feel like is typically pretty acceptable for a playoff standard, right? One of them has dropped 3, and I know they're an auto bid, but I just, like, a 3-loss team versus a 1-loss team in the same conference, I feel like, I mean, 3 is a lot. I'm not saying that they have to be. I'm saying it's borderline. I know the head-to-head, but I'm saying that, like, I feel like a head-to-head is more like a tiebreaker if you're considering 2 teams, and I don't know that these teams necessarily, like, if you looked at them, you know, just based on their schedule and didn't even consider the head-to-head, I don't know that you would state that Kansas State is, you know, on the same level, or Baylor's on the same level as Kansas State in terms of their consistency, but I'm not going to harp too high on it. If majority believes that Kansas State should for sure be below Baylor because of the head-to-head, that's fine. But I do think that Kansas has been consistently more impressive than Baylor, who has lost to a G5 school and an unranked school as well, versus Kansas State, who's only lost to a conference champion in Baylor. Yes, it is the head-to-head that they're going against, but that's their only blemish in the entire season, and I think it's a respectable blemish versus 2 pretty questionable blemishes that Baylor has.
Okay.
Solid read.
So, no, I agree. Now, what makes me kind of feel like I think I'd have to give it to Baylor is because you're absolutely right. They're not comparable at all with their resumes, just like record-wise, looking at the schedules. You know, Kansas State far ahead, better. They have they each have the same amount of wins, except Kansas State does have the CU. The thing that gets me is, like, they have the conference championship, so I feel like that adds, like, gets them in the conversation with Kansas State. And then the fact that there is a head-to-head, and the fact that the head-to-head isn't like a 3-point loss, you know, it's a pretty hefty 24-point win. So I feel like, and it's with a backup quarterback. Right?
I don't love, like, the backup, like, you know, it's like, oh, it's with the backup. I want to look at the teams as they are, right? Because it's like, I mean, I can understand, I can like respect the fact that, like, it is Baylor's quarterback now. Is he the starter? Is it back to the starter? Is the starter back in?
Yes, so Teddy Bridgewater is back in, and they put up 58 against Arkansas.
Was that an injury or a coach decision?
Injury.
Okay.
He had a dislocated elbow for 7 weeks.
Gotcha.
Okay, so let's move on. Or anyone else have a thought on Baylor versus Kansas State?
I lean in the direction that I would also put Kansas State above Baylor, because I think if we weren't looking at auto bids and we were just going to rank the top 25 teams, I'd be saying that you're probably thinking about Kansas State at around like 4 maybe, and Baylor we'd be talking maybe top 10, like 11, 12 around there. So I lean in the direction of Baylor over Kansas State, just because if it was 2 losses, I would, K-State over Baylor. If it was 2 losses and Baylor had the head-to-head and the conference championship, I would go with Baylor. But I think it's the fact that it's the 3rd loss that lost to Oklahoma State. Like, if they went if they lost to SMU, lost to Washington, beat Oklahoma State, I'd be putting Baylor over Kansas
And
State.
I would too.
Yeah. Okay, so are we general consensus? Obviously, Flame can't say anything, but I will be okay if we put Kansas State over Baylor.
I would personally put Baylor over Kansas State as well.
Ooh.
Okay, so 2v2. Oh god. Alright, let's table that. Let's see
Maybe
if
we should-
there's other answers. Because I don't know if this is like a 7 versus 8 thing or like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because Baylor has to
Right.
be in. So we
And we can always, if someone's available, we can call in a tiebreaker for one.
Right. Okay, so Maryland is another 2-loss team. Now, they now have a decent win now against FSU and Michigan and Penn State. Now remember, this Penn State was on their first stringer in this game. They're now down to their third stringer, so that's why they have 5 losses. Honestly, like I hate the argument in general for a quality loss, but it's actually pretty impressive that Maryland only lost by 6 at Ohio State. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
But
I generally,
Can you hear?
I generally think that quality losses aren't usually anything to write about. But if your losses to the number 1 team in the country at them, kind of.
Well, I think my thing for
That's a
quality
good one.
losses is they're kind of further down the list, right? Like I think it's like you
Yeah.
start looking at like resumes first, then like da 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 da, and then I think like further down the list, if you're really like trying to find like dissimilarities, right? I think that's when you start looking at like, okay, who's got quality losses, right? Like, I think it's important, but I think it's further down the list.
And I
okay.
do like Maryland's resume, but I don't think it's as good as NC State's personally.
Gotcha. And I want to be pointing out injuries just in general for all these contenders because the real life committee considers it. But Maryland was down their top 2 running backs for Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, Indiana, and Minnesota. So
Okay.
just keep that in mind. All right, next up, I believe it would be Notre Dame. I think this is probably one of the stronger resumes for considering at 5, honestly. Because the question the entire year was, okay, they haven't faced anybody, right? Like one bowl-eligible team before they faced Syracuse, where they got boat raced at home on BearCave. Then they're able to pull it out at Tennessee, but on game day, which is what matters for the playoff, in basically a playoff game of sorts at Stanford, they dominated that game. And the offense, they have the game manager QB guy, Buckner, but Tyree just took over that game, ran for like 280 yards or something like that. And so I think they're very impressive. I personally think they're a playoff team, and I think that I would consider putting them at 5 here.
Yeah, I think I like them the best out of every team we've looked at so far, at least, to be 5.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. I think they have the best win of.
As much as it goes against my clause of Notre Dame has to be perfect to get in my eyes, yeah, they pretty much saved themselves with that Stanford win.
Absolutely.
So,
all right, let's not finalize them quite yet because we still have a few teams to go over here. So the final 2 is Pac-12, right? So obviously Notre Dame over Stanford because of that head-to-head. They got locked out of the Pac-12 championship, unfortunately, because of that ASU loss at home. And then that loss, their offense, it was in the rain. One of the best offenses in the country just did not even show up. They're... Now, the ASU loss does look a lot better, though, because they are a conference champion. But I'm not exactly sure if they have the head-to-head win or the... their best win is Arizona, so I don't know if they have...
Yeah,
the
this is
wins
probably
to get
my
it.
least favorite team in my eyes.
Let's look at the other team. Who was it?
So Washington, who is
Washington.
a favorite pretty much all season, ranked number 2. They had a bad overtime loss here.
Yeah.
Week 2 reminder, but then they were able to beat Baylor. They destroyed them. So honestly, these teams, I think it's also comparable that if Washington gets in, they probably need to be ranked over Baylor because of the 20-point victory. Because I mean, they're 2-loss. They have the win over Arizona. They have the win over Cal. They have a win over ODU as well. Like, this is an impressive team.
I agree. But here's my problem with, like, I think we're maybe weighing head-to-head a little too heavily. Like, I think it should be weighed pretty heavily. Don't get me wrong. But I think we're weighing it a little too – because I think whenever you're talking about, like, okay, these are the 8 best teams, I don't think that you can put a Kansas – because, like, consider what we're talking about. Because what you're considering is that Notre Dame should be probably 5 or 6. You're saying that Washington should be above Baylor, and you're saying that Baylor should be above Kansas State. So you're saying right now Kansas State should be 8 at 11-1, with a loss to only a conference championship top 10 team, playoff team.
Yeah, that's the conundrum we're in with these rankings.
But that's why I think Kansas State should be ranked higher than Baylor. Because, like, okay, consider this, right? Consider someone else. Let's say who else on the schedule? Let's say let's say Washington. Let's say that their loss was to Washington late in the season, right? Instead of the head-to-head with Baylor, you for sure would put Kansas State at either 5 or 6 without a doubt. It would not even really be that much of a question, which is why I think we're weighing the head-to-head way too heavily in what we're talking about. I think if you remove the fact that that's a head-to-head, and I think for sure you put Kansas State at either 5 or 6 as the best at large bid, for sure. Even maybe, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think without a doubt, I don't think that. Because I think a head-to-head is more of a tiebreaker between 2 teams. The problem is I don't think that there's much of a tiebreaker between Baylor right now and Kansas State right now, because I think Kansas State only having 1 loss over the entire season completely outweighs the fact that Baylor's had dropped 3 and 2 of them to not very good schools versus Kansas State's only been to a very quality opponent. And I think if that quality opponent was anybody other than Baylor, I think for sure we would have them 5 or 6, probably 5.
Yeah, so, like, okay, if you compare just, like, which teams have the best wins, it's Washington and NC State. But, like, it's all going to come down to what, like, our tier list of what we value the most, right? Because head-to-head, if you value that, it's going to go one way. If you value the best wins, if you only go losses, then you automatically put Notre Dame and Kansas State in, but they're honestly not as impressive, even though they have less losses. So it's like,
well, and here's the thing, right? Is I think there's 2 teams there's a team that's gonna be left out of this that, like, if the playoffs were 9, it'd be perfect. The problem is it can't be, because so one of these teams can't make it, and it's gonna be either Washington, NC State, or Kansas State. And I think without a doubt, you cannot make that team Kansas State at 11-1 in a Power 5. I think the best case that someone has is Kansas State out of those teams. And I think at the moment you have to consider either between Washington or NC State on who gets left out.
Oh my God.
See, I'm gonna disagree with that.
Really? But, like, who should be left out then?
I think having better wins against better opponents makes you better, because it shows that you can compete with top opponents.
Okay, maybe at this point, because we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different teams for these final 4 spots, right? Why don't we eliminate a few? Because I think none of us are really talking about Maryland. I don't think
has a chance.
No. I think
everyone's not a fan of Maryland right now. Okay, so we're not even considering them right now for the playoff. Stanford, I feel like they have the head-to-head loss against Notre Dame. You guys said that you weren't really impressed with them. Like, their only other win is Arizona.
Yeah.
So I think go ahead.
between Washington and Stanford, the more impressive team is Washington.
Yeah, absolutely, with their resume, especially
Yeah.
the non-conference win against Baylor as well.
Yeah.
So, okay. So right now we've eliminated Stanford and Maryland just from the conversation. So now we're down to Notre Dame, Baylor, Washington, Kansas State, and NC State. One team has to leave. Instead of right now eliminating one team, I think we figure out who's 5.
I say Notre Dame.
I say Notre Dame as well. I think that's a pretty undisputed. I think Notre Dame hits 5 pretty easily for
So
everybody.
is it? I just want to make sure we're checking ourselves, right? Because we're all like, all right, we're eliminating Stanford from consideration, but then we're automatically like, oh, Notre Dame, even though they have a lot worse of a schedule, pretty much. Like they have 1 win, and that's at Stanford, who is a top 5 team at the time. Right.
Well, but we also have to consider though that just because Stanford's not in the playoff doesn't mean that they're not a top 10 team. If we were considering 7 in the last 4, they're at least a top 11 team, and I would say they're probably better than Maryland. So I'd say they're a top 10 team. That's a win over a top 10 team.
So
and they're only 1 loss.
Now I'm just playing devil's advocate here. So Washington's obviously played 1 more game than Notre Dame. They did lose it, right? But they also have 1, 2, 3, at least 3 more ranked wins than Notre Dame has. And honestly, losing to Syracuse 3 weeks ago at home by 35 compared to losing at Boise State on the blue turf in overtime in week 2, I think are a little bit more comparable than what meets the eye. Especially when you have a schedule like Notre Dame's. I think if we're truly going by resume, I'm not sure Notre Dame is 5.
Yeah, I kind of just realized that I just contradicted myself by saying Notre Dame. Because I said that the highest wins should be high. And then I put Notre Dame at 5, so that didn't really
And that's... So, I think, honestly, if we're trying to marry all of these factors together, I want to look at NC State again. They have 1, 2, 3. I think the team that kind of marries the not necessarily bad losses, but quality wins mixed with everything we're kind of talking about. Personally, I might put Kansas State at 5. I don't know if I like it.
But I think you have to with 1 loss, and they do have quality wins, multiple quality wins, and their only loss is, again, further on the list, but their only loss is to a playoff team.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Only loss to a playoff team. They have 2 other top 25 wins. I know Arkansas has 5 losses, but that was a game day game as well, so those are definitely harder to win. Besides those 2 wins, though, their schedule is kind of similar to Notre Dame's. But then again, Notre Dame doesn't have any of these type of games really. So,
right.
Yeah, I think the balance puts Kansas State at 5. We see Washington has bad losses with good wins, but Kansas State beating bad teams and beating good teams.
Okay, so I think we all consensus Kansas State at 5?
Yes.
Okay.
I think Kansas State, I think that the head-to-head is what's making me think Kansas State over Notre Dame, because the loss that Kansas State has is to a good team that is going to be in the playoffs, and Notre Dame lost to a team that won 8 games, didn't really compete in their division.
Well, and again, if we're talking about I think they have the combination of quality wins, a quality loss, but to a playoff team, but they also are 11-1, right? I think you that altogether is a really good recipe for a playoff team, and I think that no other team that we're considering out of those 5 has quite as good of a recipe in terms of everything. They have kind of all. They may not have as big of checks in their boxes, but they have all of the checks in their boxes. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah. So I think the most consistent, because like everybody has some big weaknesses in the resume. I don't really think Kansas State does. So okay, so right now, the 4 versus 5 matchup would be Georgia and Kansas State. So keep that in mind. Okay. So now we're on to 6. Okay, so we're down. We still have to rank Baylor at some point, but you're down to Notre Dame, Washington, NC State, and Baylor.
So I'm just gonna say I think Washington should 100% be in front of Baylor because I think their resume is better and they have the head-to-head.
Dude, are we about to leave out Notre Dame?
I don't know. Let's keep going. But honestly, from just like I'm all for considering NC State, but this is not the spot just because this is against Clemson.
Yeah,
they've already played. I don't think we should have a rematch necessarily. And honestly, I don't think NC State probably is the best choice right here.
I think right here you go Washington. I think number 7 you go Baylor, and I think number 8 is between Notre Dame and NC State.
Oh, jeez.
Exactly what I'm thinking.
Okay, so you guys are all saying Washington here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have a decent resume. They belong over Baylor for sure. We can't. Okay, well here's the thing. We can't. Like you said, NC State. We can't really put here, right? So it's not like. So either you're saying that we put Notre Dame here and leave out NC State altogether, or we put Washington here, Baylor in 7, and Notre Dame or NC State at 8. I think it matters. I think it matters who you actually keep in, because I think if you have Notre Dame, you can put them at 6. I think if you have NC State, you have to put them at 8.
So I'm just looking at the
what
wins.
we should do is right now figure out of the 3 at-large teams who we think is the worst. Because once we do that, we don't have to consider them and we can sort the last 3 teams easier, I think.
Okay, so let's figure out the 2 at-large bids. Here's Washington. 2 top 15 wins, because Cal's not going to move down. Arizona's not going to move down. They would only move up at this point. Baylor's guaranteed top 8. ODU's going to move up. ASU's going to move up, but they lost to them. So 3 top 15 wins for sure. That's very impressive. The Boise State loss is super bad though. Okay, there's one. You got Notre Dame, who's 11-1. They've played 1 less game than Washington, same as NC State.
Damn, dude.
Like I said, best opponent was USC at home, and they only won by 5 in October. And then they get destroyed by Syracuse. But then they come back with 2 great wins. Like Stanford is probably not the best win remaining, but it's better than any of Washington's wins.
Here's the thing about Notre Dame, right? Here's the thing about Notre Dame is that let me say what record that the first 8 weeks have for them. Not 9 weeks. They have a team against losing record, losing record, losing record, losing record, losing record, losing record, even losing record, losing record.
Yeah. And then they go 2-1 against teams over 500.
And then I'm just going to put this out here. I don't know if we take this into account at all, but we did leave 11-1 Notre Dame out last year, and they showed us up in the Citrus Bowl. So
I do remember that, but also that had Miles Gooch. That's different, though.
Yeah. Play some out of conference then, Notre Dame, but good God.
Literally.
I mean,
mistakes maybe.
Okay, let's be honest though, right? Texas was ranked at this time probably. I'm sure that they were
earlier.
Texas, with the brand name, Texas was up and around there. They probably were just unranked, so that's not necessarily the worst game in the world. Pitt was supposed to be good. I think that might have been a first ranked game, but once again, it's a 3-point win on the road over a team that's not bowl eligible.
See, that's the thing too, is against all those teams that I just said losing record, these games are close games.
Yeah.
These are not like they're not blowing. Like okay, the thing with to talk IRL here for a second. The reason why Ohio State is still ranked as one of the top teams is because they are demolishing all the teams. Even though they're bad teams, they're demolishing all of them. Notre Dame's kind of playing on the same level as all of these really shitty teams.
Okay, so
Versus,
the team with the best win remaining is probably Notre Dame, though. Unless we think Miami, okay, I just want to make sure nobody thinks Miami should make the playoff, right?
no.
Okay.
They had their chance.
Yeah, they had their chance. They came back twice, but they couldn't do it. Okay, so Miami's out. So I think Stanford's a better win than Miami. I think Miami is also a better win than no, Baylor. Okay, Stanford's a better win than Baylor, in my opinion. Baylor is a better win than Miami probably at this point just because of the conference championship. So NC State does have the worst loss, or doesn't have the same kind of wins, but they also have ODU, which seems to be a great win. FSU, who's technically ranked, they may not even be ranked by the time we're done with this, and they lost to BC. So all the losses are okay. This might get Washington to lose out on this race, only because if you look at everyone's losses, Notre Dame only lost to 8-4 Syracuse. NC State lost to Clemson, which is an okay loss. It was a bit of a blowout, but then they lose to a 7-5 Boston College. So, Washington, they lose to 9-4 Arizona State and Boise State. So Washington does have the worst combined losses out of any of these teams that are remaining too.
I just don't. But again, I think losses are further down on the list. The quality of losses is further down on the list, in my opinion, than the quality of wins.
I fully agree with that, and that's why I think you cannot leave Washington out.
I don't, and honestly, I don't think we can leave the Pac-12 out on just, if not any other reason, then the Pac-12 is by far the best conference in SFA history. So,
I just there's 4 ranked team wins on there, and one of them is a playoff team.
Okay, so
it wasn't particularly close.
So, are we all in agreement Washington needs to make the playoff?
Absolutely.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
So that we've narrowed it down there. Okay, so now we have 2 playoff teams. We'll seed them once we finish this. So now Notre Dame and NC State. Okay, this also plays into account. Notre Dame is 8 home games to only 4 road games. They did win all the road games though.
Most big teams play a ton of home games though.
All right, let's check these guys. More points for. They 4 in a row. They're 6-6. Okay, so 6-6 and then 5-1 each.
They had a tougher. I'm personally.
And it was a road loss.
Personally, I think NC State is almost the obvious choice here. And I think Notre Dame did themselves in by not scheduling anybody out of fucking conference.
Dude, this is.
But it's just they have the best win in my eyes.
They have okay. Let me ask you this, right? Because they may have the best win, but think about this stretch. Is it more impressive to win against Stanford than it is to win at Old Dominion, at Miami, at FSU, against Georgia Tech? Is that less impressive to you? Is that 4-game stretch less impressive to you than their game against Stanford?
I think NC State, it is more impressive, but also going back to your same argument on going undefeated or whatever, Notre Dame didn't really get to pick their schedule. They did what they did with it. I think they don't have the luxury of a conference championship, and I think NC State kind of lucks out that they're in this probably the best division in the country. Maybe Ohio State's division's better, but
I think this is also like a thing. I mean, this is also real world implications too, right? Because like this is the exact issue that Notre Dame's going to run into in real life. Is that they
Right.
don't have a conference championship game, they don't have an auto bid. That is on the school. That is not on the selection process. That's more on the school, and you'll see it. Like you'll see, like Michigan will get screwed out of a playoff spot. Not screwed out of a playoff spot, but they will not get considered because they played Hawaii and whoever else they played at a conference that was no one. I
also don't think that we can use that as a comparable thing at this point because NC State also didn't play in the conference championship. They didn't even win their division. So I think they're in the same boat.
But I think we're talking about the second best team in the best conference.
Yeah, that's true. Now NC State also does the most likely Heisman winner. I don't know if that matters, if players matter, but Houston's been popping off.
I think
just don't like
2,000
idea.
yards and 22 touchdowns.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
I don't want to leave Notre Dame out again, but
Same
I know
thing.
they have the best win, but that 5-game stretch that NC State played, those would all be better. They're all better games than Syracuse.
So
and they won 4 of them.
And we have Syracuse as a common opponent as well for NC State.
They do. I was about to mention that.
Okay, so common opponent, yeah, Syracuse, they win by 10. And it was at Syracuse. Syracuse wasn't at their home. The reason why I think I'm choosing NC State right now, I'm leaning towards them, even though like the past week, 2 weeks, I've been like, okay, Notre Dame's in if they beat Stanford. Is if you look at the schedule, and if Miami would have beaten Clemson on game day just now, then it would be a no-brainer that we put NC State in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think just with that,
I really don't want to leave Notre Dame out again, but I don't think you have a choice here.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think
really,
Baylor screwed them again. It was Baylor last year that screwed them in Utah. I think Baylor screws them again.
It's for your pizza, so bro.
Flame, you do it every year.
Fuck Notre Dame. If they don't seriously, but that's the thing is that it's like, oh, we can't use we can use real world logic to an extent, but especially in this circumstance because we have the auto bid in the SFA. In real life, they're going to have the auto bid in real life. If that's going to become an issue for Notre Dame, and they're going to act on it. Like I genuinely think they are going to act on it in real life. And if the SFA Notre Dame doesn't act on it, then this is what's going to happen. It's just going to keep happening to them because their out of conference is not good. Like their schedule in general is not good because they're basically scheduling all out of conference. But
it's just a whole bunch of cream puffs at this point.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, you cut out there. Okay, so are we all in agreement? We have the final 3 is going to be some sort of combination of Washington, Baylor, and NC State.
Yes, and I think
it should be in that order.
I think it should be Washington, Baylor, NC State in that order. Yeah,
I agree.
Okay, so
I agree as well.
if we do that, right? If we put Washington at 6, they face Clemson. That's the bottom right of the bracket. Clemson versus Washington. And then right above them on that side would then be Memphis and Baylor. And then over on the other side, you would have Ohio State against NC State. And I think NC State would have a great chance of winning that game. And then you would have Georgia and Kansas State on the bottom.
That sounds like fun playoff right there.
That sounds like a fire fucking playoff.
Alright, so we don't have, because the only 2 ACC teams are on opposite sides. And the only 2 Big 12 teams are on opposite sides. So we're okay with the Big 12 and the ACC getting multiple bids. Everybody else only getting 1, and Memphis is obviously in. Okay.
Yeah.
So, alright, so let me pencil this in. We got Washington.
I really hope Notre Dame doesn't embarrass us in the Citrus Bowl again.
They are.
Watch them do that again.
Oh, is
They are, dude. They're gonna run all over Arizona State.
Is that going to be a rematch
question.
in the? Oh, never mind. That's a user. Never mind.
Hey,
Yeah,
boys.
it's gonna be okay. So we have Washington.
Uh-oh.
All right, Washington at 6. Baylor
Hey,
at 7.
Can I? If y'all need me to stay, I can. I've got to be up at 4 in the morning.
No, that's fine. Go. We got.
My
I
it.
God,
wanted to get
get
the
your
8 sorted.
sleep.
I wanted to get the 8 sorted for sure, but
Yeah, the
I.
8 is good. Go ahead.
Okay, I apologize, guys. Hey, take it
No,
easy.
you're good. You're good.
Go Vols tomorrow.
It's cool, man. Get your
Hey, go
sleep.
Balls.
And I mean, we got 45 minutes in of just playoff, so we're good. We're good. You've done
Go
your.
out.
You've done your job.
Take it easy, boys.
See you
Okay.
around.
So we can all agree Notre Dame at 9.
Yes.
Yeah.
Notre Dame at 9. So this is where it gets sticky. So you have Stanford and Maryland. Probably we rank next. Who gets ahead? I think probably Stanford's been considered the better team all season.
Personally, I like Maryland, actually. I think I like Maryland's resume a little bit better than Stanford's.
Okay, so let's take a look. So OT against Utah. The loss is ASU. Best win is Arizona at 13, and then you got Notre Dame, the loss. Okay, and then Big Ten here. We got Maryland. A good win over FSU.
win.
Michigan, I think Michigan and Penn State. I like Penn State more than they're ranked.
And the close loss to Ohio State as well.
Yeah, the close loss is okay. Are we? Everyone like Maryland 9 and Stanford 10?
Or,
Yeah.
Wait, 10 and 11, right?
Oh yeah, sorry, 10 11.
Yeah.
So Maryland 10. Okay, so this is actually going to be a bowl game. So Maryland and Stanford, they're the top 2 CPU teams. So that's going to be the Outback Bowl.
All right.
All right. So now we're kind of in a weird tier where we have the 3-loss teams, and then we have Arizona State, who's like a 4-loss champ. So let's just go through quickly, and I'm gonna mark down all the 3-loss teams. Let me know if you see a 4-loss team that would deserve a shout, but I think you got to consider ODU.
I agree.
Yeah.
They're very impressive. ECU is my team, obviously. I think they might deserve a ranking, but I don't think anywhere close to.
Yeah, not up here. Definitely
You're not. Look, that's not a top 15. They're
Yeah.
fringe top 45, dude.
Colorado is 3-loss. I know we typically don't like them all that much, but I'm going to write them down. So we always do rank them. Big Ten, Michigan, got to write them down. They've just choked against big teams. Conference USA, I'm going to write down Tulane because they are still in play for the next, for the top CPU versus top CPU G5 Bowl.
You technically have Louisiana Tech down there as well.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll write them down. I'll write them down, even though we're not going to rank them. Okay. MAC, Miami, they just choked. I don't think you can
Yeah.
Once
consider
again,
them. Mountain West, I'm not writing for them. Fresno State. This
No.
conference is just booty cheeks. Okay, and then
and
I
it's
think,
gonna be even worse.
yeah, and then I think you got Arizona and Cal, who are really good.
And Arizona
And-
State.
Oh yeah, and Arizona State. Okay, so, and then let me check SEC. I don't think you rank anybody here.
No.
Haven't been ranking
No.
anybody. And then Florida FAU is definitely a great team, I think. And then USF as well has a,
USF had a good year.
yeah, and Troy. Okay, so we have our next batch. Obviously, there's a massive drop off after 11 here. So, I think, I just left. God damn it. Okay, I think we go back to the Pac-12 because these, I think, are the 3 best teams in these spots.
I agree.
Arizona, me and Rick decided was the best 3-loss team. They have the head-to-head over Cal. They did beat USF. Or no, sorry, they lost USF, but they did beat Cal. and then they did beat ASU. And I think those are the only other two teams that would have a say here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I give Arizona definitely the edges over the 3 lost teams here.
Okay,
I agree
so
as well.
you don't consider Arizona State with their Pac-12 championship to jump
No.
them, despite the head-to-head? Me either.
I
I
would
don't
jump.
think they should jump them.
I would have them
So-
jump Cal, but I would not have them jump Arizona.
Okay, so Arizona at 12. I think I'm fine with that.
Well, actually, is there a head-to-head between Arizona State and Cal?
Let's
I
take
think
a
we
look.
beat Cal.
Or
no, we
guys did
didn't. They're
not
in,
play.
They're in the other conference or division.
So
Yeah.
they did lose to Iowa late in the year, but they lost to Washington. They lost to Arizona. Both all close losses, honestly, for Cal. But I think with a Pac-12 championship and just the way they beat Washington, like the common opponent Washington, they just beat
The
them.
win over
It wasn't
Stanford
even
as well.
it wasn't even close. The win over
Yeah.
Stanford. Ooh, a win over Stanford too.
Yeah.
Do we put
That
Arizona
kind of makes
State?
me want to jump Arizona, honestly.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's going to end up being it's going to be the Citrus Bowl is Notre Dame and Arizona State anyways. So yeah, I'm all for putting Arizona State at 12.
Looks like we get another rematch.
And then
What
Arizona
was that last game?
last
That was
year's
last year.
was Notre Dame and Ole Miss was the Citrus Bowl.
Okay.
And Notre Dame destroyed Ole Miss. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, we
12
played
and-
last year in the regular season.
Oh, yeah. So Arizona State in Arizona. And now 14, I think you have to put Cal, just with their close losses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we're putting 3 teams there, but I don't see anyone who has any say. Now, I do want to look at Michigan before we start putting G5 teams.
And there's one more 3-loss Power 5 team, right? In
Yeah,
ACC?
so it's... No, not
Miami.
ACC. All those guys have 4 losses. Oh, yeah, we have to rank Miami. Fuck. Miami. I think Miami's obviously... Okay, how about this? I think we put 11 Stanford, 12 would be Miami, and then we rattle these 3 off. Because I think Miami is still a lot more quality of a team. Or do you still put Arizona State over them?
They don't really have any wins in my eyes. I may still put Arizona State over them as well.
Okay, so yeah, so the best win is FSU and Georgia Tech. Okay, so Arizona State and then Miami, or do we drop them below Arizona as well? Who has the Washington and the...
No, I think they stay in front of Arizona just because they won their division. And Cal.
Okay, so we got AZ here, we got Cal, and then 13 would be Miami. I like that.
Yeah.
AZ, Cal. Okay, 16. Then I think we're probably in a position here to drop Michigan a little bit. Not because of a lack of me liking them at all, but the fact that you have, at this point, you have ODU and FAU. I personally think the best 2 remaining G5 teams, with Tulane losing like 2 of their last 2 matchups, and then Miami, Ohio getting blown out by Toledo. I think ODU with an AAC championship against FAU would be that top G5 game. I think FAU beats out USF.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. Now, which one would go at 16? We've been ranking FAU over them just because they have big wins against Florida and Miami.
Yeah, those wins, those are very good wins.
And then they destroyed South, like they're up 20-0 in the first quarter.
Yeah, you got to keep them over.
Okay. And they're high. Okay, so FAU will be 16. Do we put ODU at 17 then?
I don't really see anyone that could go over them. I mean,
I think the
Colorado's
only
not
team
there, right?
is-
Colorado's.
Well, let's check Colorado again. They have a win, I think. They don't have any good wins. We've been disrespecting them all year. lost to Arkansas, lost to Kansas State, lost to ISU. Their best win is Missouri.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
so
I think we still ranked them, but like at the end.
Yeah. So FAU 16, 17 would be ODU. Then I think you probably go Michigan. Yeah. Anyone have any disagreements on this?
No.
Okay.
Michigan doesn't really have I don't think they even have a ranked win or anything. I think all the teams
Yeah,
we would
like,
consider for top 25 are they lost to.
Yeah, so they lost to
They did
the
beat Penn State.
3. Yeah, they did beat Penn State, but I don't think we're going to consider them for a ranking. UNLV is a conference champ, though, so that's a better win than Colorado. All right, so we're at 19 now. I think...
Can we look at like Auburn in the SEC, something like that?
Yeah, so let's start to consider these 4-loss teams. So I'm going to go back to the ACC here.
Oh yeah, we got a couple there.
I think all 3 of these teams you could rank. It's kind of a clusterfuck. I don't know if you rank all 3. So
I think
FSU
you definitely rank
has-
Georgia Tech.
So FSU has the head-to-head over Syracuse. Syracuse has the win over Notre Dame, but they lost. And then Georgia Tech, they have the win over Clemson. I think that probably trumps, and a Tulane win, so I think they have to go ahead of them.
I think that trumps everyone there.
Okay.
Top
Even though
remaining-
they got destroyed by Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but do you jump them, do you put Georgia Tech all the way up here? Like, I think USF probably you would put here, because they have 2 losses.
Yeah, that is true.
And they did beat Arizona.
They did. Yeah, I think you got to put them there.
And the 2 losses aren't bad considering either.
Yeah.
Nice. So USF at 19. Alright, 20. Okay, so teams I want to rank just from this pile, Colorado for sure needs to get ranked.
Definitely rank them.
Do you rank either Miami, Ohio, or Tulane, who just lost? Tulane was a close loss, but they've also lost 2 in a row.
Tulane, but not now.
Right. I don't know Miami, Ohio deserves a rank after
Yeah, I
getting
don't
destroyed.
think they do. Really.
Okay. I don't think LA Tech deserves it. We got Arizona, Cal. So Colorado, Tulane right now are the only people in my pile. I'm gonna search
Maybe
for
Troy, because I think Troy had some good wins in conference, but I think we're talking like they would be 25th or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
they
I don't
could be
think you
on.
consider them. SEC, Auburn, I think is the only
Auburn.
team you consider right now.
That's about it from there.
Pac-12, we have these 5. Nobody else below that. Mountain West, you might want to consider UNLV, maybe, but that may be later. MAC, you're not considering Toledo. I don't think 5 losses is way too much. We're probably gonna rank Tulane. I don't think LA Tech. I don't think you rank Illinois. They just got
It was
out of a fight.
That was an absolute
murder.
dude. Nope.
If it was a closer game, I would consider it, but that was bad.
So we have Colorado then, and then I don't think you consider Arkansas at this point either. American, I think you consider ECU.
You do consider ECU here.
And then AC. Okay, so these are the teams that we have left. We have FSU, Syracuse, GT, and then you have CU, you have Tulane, and you have ECU. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spots, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams. So I think those are.
Out of all these teams, I think I like Georgia Tech the best right now. I think they got the best wins, and
I think so as well. They have the head-to-head against Tulane. They did beat Clemson on the road by 25.
I mean, that's the best remaining win you're gonna get.
Yeah. And their only losses are like all playoff contenders besides Syracuse.
I'm Syracuse, yeah.
Now, we are considering ranking Syracuse, but I think the Clemson win kind of trumps that right now.
Yeah.
So I think
Oh, it absolutely does.
Okay, so do we go... So we're going Georgia Tech here. So GT. Now, do you put Syracuse right behind them just because of that win against Georgia Tech?
I wouldn't think.
Don't
No.
think you can just for that. But
Yeah.
maybe if we look.
Well, because also Florida State, I think it's more comparable between Syracuse and Florida State with the head-to-head than it is Syracuse to
I
Georgia.
agree.
Okay.
But I'm
Yeah,
not sure
'cause
if I want to rank
they
them
lost to every single team besides... Okay. Alright, so we have Georgia Tech. Now, do you rank Colorado here? Do you rank Tulane, ECU, Florida
I
State?
think it's got to be Colorado. I
Colorado
know they didn't
21.
won, but 3 losses.
Yeah, I think you gotta honor the
You got to respect the 3
9-win
losses.
team. Okay, 22. Probably Florida State here, honestly. Because they have the head-to-head against Syracuse. I don't think Tulane on a 2-game skid deserves it over.
Does Auburn have any wins?
Yeah, let's check Auburn. Let's check Auburn. Because they were a top 5 team at one point.
Yeah.
Lost to Tennessee, lost to Florida 2 in a row. Lost to the only other, no great ranked wins.
No great wins. They got a couple good wins.
Close loss to the number 4 team in the country though.
Yeah.
Honestly,
I
kind of like Auburn more than I do like Florida State
I was just gonna say
or
that.
Syracuse.
I agree.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think Auburn's that one loss is bad, but I think the loss to Georgia being an OT loss kind of makes up for it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Alright, so I have Auburn at 22. So 23 now. We have 4 teams left for 3 spots. We have ECU, Tulane, FSU, and Syracuse. I think 10 wins at this point is hard to come by, obviously. It's probably the only 10-win team left. So that performed well. I think Tulane, they only lost by a touchdown. And they've been dominant all season.
I think the way I see it, I think my final 3 would go Tulane, FSU, ECU. Because Syracuse didn't they? I think they have some bad losses if I remember correctly.
Yeah, let's take a look. Syracuse again. So they did beat Notre Dame, which we aren't as high on, I guess, at the end here. They lost to NC State, lost to Clemson, lost to FSU, and lost to Miami. So I think you leave Syracuse out.
I agree. I think I like what Rick just said.
Okay, so we go. You said Tulane,
I said
FSU.
Yep, and then ECU at 25.
ECU at 25, yeah.
Okay, so Tulane, FSU, ECU. Okay, so I'm going to run back through everything. We're not changing the top 8 because Nick is gone, but it's going to be Ohio State, Memphis, Clemson, Georgia, those top 4. Then Kansas State, Washington, Baylor, NC State. That's the playoff. Got Notre Dame at 9. 10 is Maryland. 11 Stanford. 12 is Arizona State. 13 is Miami. 14 Arizona. 15 Cal. 16 FAU. 17 ODU. 18 Michigan. 19 USF. 20 Georgia Tech. 21 Colorado. 22 Auburn. 23 Tulane. 24 FSU, and 25 ECU.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep. Sounds good to me.
God damn, we did it. Well, for you guys who've been in this the last few years, this committee has been 10 times better than any of the other ones we've had.
Definitely better than last year's, I'll tell you that.
I was there. It was a scream fest.
Yeah.
And I had to do that during work. Not fun.
Alright, so we have our teams. I'm going to get all the graphics and stuff posted. There's going to be talk on how Notre Dame got snubbed again. I think that's probably going to be the biggest issue.
That's only
So
the big
just-
controversy, really.
Yeah, so we just got to watch out for those questions, but I think we stick with it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Look, that's a talking point on the podcast next week.
There you go. Alrighty. Thank you guys for joining the committee, and yeah, we're done.